put in the plan. Just more money that they put in their hand. Just more money that they take out the bag. Stamp get kicked back through the tax. Taking little kids is an OCS trap. We don't need your education and elimination of our way of thinking. Assimilation to your racist system. Hey, OCS, hey, OCS, OCS. Leave them kids alone. Leave those kids alone. All right, we tuning back into NaNTV. We got another episode for you today, folks. Pour some of this nice hot black coffee. Our subject today is the theft of America's children. We are still on that subject, America. Today we'll be talking about how black babies were stolen ever since this country was conceived. So we're going to get into the reason the child welfare system was created and how they manipulate the system to steal your children, America. Stay tuned. NaNTV, baby.
The racist roots of the child welfare system. Forcible separation of black families has deep roots in American slavery, which commodified and exploited enslaved black women's reproductive capacity as fuel for economic growth. This system depended on denying enslaved mothers custody of their children, who were considered property of the slaveholder. When the government assumed responsibility for quote-unquote child welfare in the early 20th century, its intervention in indigenous communities was so extensive that by the 1970s, up to 2/3 of indigenous children no longer lived with their families or in their own communities. In the 1960s, black families were blamed for raising children in poverty and punished with permanent termination of their parental rights. This is the framework in which the child welfare system, better understood as the family regulation system, continues to operate today. Black families in New York are 7 times as likely as white families to be reported to the family regulation system and 13 times more likely to have their children removed. State lawmakers must act swiftly to reduce the number of black and brown families needlessly investigated, torn apart, and traumatized by this racist system.
All right, we tune back into NaNTV, baby. You know what it is. Haha. Yeah, today we're going to be talking about the black babies that were stolen before slavery ended and after. Ooh, that's some hot ones right there, boy. All right, check this out. The systemic racism in the United States has facilitated the removal of black children from their families through a historical progression of legal and social mechanisms, from chattel slavery to the modern child welfare system. Did you get that? Systemic racism facilitated the removal of black children from their families through a historical progression of legal and social mechanisms. So they constructed it that way. They constructed it, formed it to fit their narrative and their what they want the outcome to be, which is whatever, the man wanted to be. That's why he the man. That's why he the system, the slave owner. He's been owning American slaves since the beginning. How else you gonna keep people in line for 224 years? You know what I mean? All right. Historical foundations. Chattel slavery. I'm having a hard time saying that one. For centuries, enslaved black children were legally considered the property of enslavers under the doctrine of partus sequutur vetrum. Damn, that's a tough word right there. Partus sequutur vetrum. Children born to enslaved mothers were automatically enslaved. Hold on. I want to Google how to say this word. Hold on. Partus sequutur vetrum. I got to look this up. I want to see what this is about. Partus. Right here. Pop right up. What do you know? That's interesting. Hey, I only popped in the partis part and the rest of that.
Was known as partis sequitur ventrum,
Partis
determining one's
sequitur
enslaved
ventrum.
status based on their mother's labor status, as the legal method to determine whether an individual is enslaved or not. Some scholars, such as Jennifer L. Morgan.
That's pretty deep. All right, now back. Children born to enslaved mothers were automatically enslaved, allowing owners to separate families at will for economic profit or to discourage rebellion. Black codes and apprenticeship laws. Following the Civil War, many southern states passed black codes that included apprenticeship statutes. These allowed judges to remove black children from their parents, often returning them to the former enslavers under the pretext that the parents were unfit or neglectful. Isn't that interesting? So long back then, they were painting a narrative that people of color were unfit or neglectful of their children. Interesting. Okay. Exclusion from early welfare. We couldn't even get on the welfare. In the early 20th century, early child care institutions and mothers' pensions frequently excluded black families, pushing them instead into more punitive systems like juvenile detention or adult jails, even when no crime was committed. That's interesting. Modern systemic mechanisms. Today's scholars and advocates often refer to child welfare system as the family policing system due to its disproportionate impact on black families. They like the police of the black family's home and the indigenous people home and the Mexican people family home and anybody that ain't white. Well, don't get it twisted. They probably investigating white people just as much as they doing everybody else. They trying to steal your kids. You know what the plan is. Conflation of poverty with neglect. But when we showing you how easy it is for them to steal children of color. That's what today's subject is about. The vast majority of child removals, over 70%, are based on neglect rather than the physical or sexual abuse. Vague legal definitions of neglect often track conditions of poverty, such as inadequate housing or food insecurity, which disproportionately affect black families due to the structural economic inequity. Mandated reporting and surveillance. Federal laws like the Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act require mandated reporters, teachers, doctors, police to report suspected maltreatment. Studies show doctors are more likely to suspect abuse in black children than white children with identical injuries, leading to a surveillance rate where roughly 50% of black children undergo child welfare investigations before age 18. Arbitrary legal timelines. The Adoption and Safe Families Act established strict timelines for terminating parental rights if a child remains in foster care. These timelines are often impossible for impoverished parents to meet, leading to the permanent legal separation of families. So the longer your kid in the system, the more time they got to terminate your legal rights. Yeah, that way they, get it, work it how they want to work it. You know what I'm saying? Disparate outcomes. Once in the system, black children are 4 times less likely to be reunited with their families than white children. Currently, 1 out of every 41 black children in the U.S. will have their legal relationship with their parents permanently. Strict timelines for terminating parental rights if a child remains in foster care. These timelines are often impossible for impoverished parents to meet, leading to a permanent legal separation. Oh, hold on. We already read this. Where does it come in with this? Hold on. Relationship with the... Okay, that was the end of it. Okay. 1 out of every 41 black children in the U.S. will have their legal relationship with their parents permanently terminated. Okay. That's interesting. Yeah. Oh, this is the last part. Strict timelines for terminating parental rights if a child remains in foster care. These timelines, well, no, we read that already. But yeah, man, we got the gist of what's going on, man. Come on, man. It's NaNTV, baby. We know what's going on with these people trying to snatch up your babies. They've been doing this for a long time. It's big business in America to take the kids out the home. Don't put them back in the home. Even if you corrected all the mistakes that they found or didn't find, you know, they still taking your kids, man, and they got the power over you. To me, that's just too much power for one person to have over another person, if you catch what I'm saying. But yeah, man, today's episode, we're going to dive into some more videos of things that they've done, the atrocities of the theft of America's children. And we're just going to keep bringing you the real from the coldest place on earth, you know. In my situation, they just, you know, I fix situation and they be like, still you a horrible, bad role model because you a entertainer or you a podcaster or you a rapper or whatever your job is. They can paint you to be whatever they want. If I was a boxer and I gotta talk crap to the other boxer and bust his head till we both bloody, am I a bad role model to my children? If I'm an actor and I go on set and I'm playing a villain and I shoot 5 people in the face, does that mean I'm a bad role model? That's what's at question here. America is your freedom of speech. Just back like when we was fighting for the civil rights to be able to say what we want to say. When Larry Flint wanted to put naked women out on magazines and they tried to tell him no. This is what all this is. When rap music came out, they tried to say, oh, this is a fad. Oh, this is bad music. This is going to destroy the kids. They did everything in their power to try to destroy black culture. But then they figured, hey, since we can't stop the music they making, let's have them just keep talking about shooting each other, because that's big business for us too. Same people own them record businesses, own the prisons too. Real talk. It's all a cycle. Keep you in it. The system. And if you choose to play by their rules, you will forever be entrapped by their game. I refuse to be entrapped by the game. I'm going to speak up and I'm going to say what's on my mind, and we never going to hold back. And like in the name of Bone Crusher, we ain't never scared. So it is what it is. You know? I'll just let y'all know, man, I ain't sick. I ain't got no thoughts of suicide, and I ain't no punk. So it is what it is, man. We here, man. NaNTV, ain't nothing stopping the AKliens movement, because pretty soon y'all gonna have to answer to somebody. Just like when you make these people that you keep as your slaves, the American people and the world population, we answer to you. One day you gonna have to answer to somebody. I hope I'm there to see it. I'm gonna be sipping on this black coffee. All right, y'all. NaNTV, man. We're gonna check out some videos, take a small break. I gotta take a piss, and we'll be back before you know it. Stay tuned. NaNTV, baby.
Okay. Now let's disperse this mob. That's too much power for one man to have.
The number of children in foster care is falling dramatically across the country. It's gone from about 600,000 2 years ago to 400,000 today. But despite this progress, one divide remains. African American children are twice as likely as white children to be taken from their parents and put into foster care. Roxana Saberi is here with that. Roxana.
John, foster care was created more than a century ago to give homeless children a place to call home. Today, some African Americans argue it's used as a weapon to take their children away from them.
Oh, I remember that one.
Joyce McMillan and her daughter Courtney have two sets of family memories.
This is when you were coming home, before your braces.
Memories from before Courtney went into foster care when she was 8, and after she came home 2 years later.
That changed me a lot from that day, just because you don't forget being taken from your mom.
It was very difficult to wake up in the morning and not see her smiling face, not having her call mommy, mommy.
Joyce admits she was using what she calls an illicit substance when New York City's child welfare agency took Courtney away. But she says her daughter was not in imminent danger, the legal standard for taking children from their homes.
There was a substance issue, but it wasn't one that kept me from taking care of her or supplying her with her daily needs. We had an apartment, we were doing well.
What was it, marijuana or?
It's not that I'm uncomfortable saying what it is, I just don't think that it matters, for the simple fact that regardless of what it is that I used, there was things that they could have put in place, and none of those were given to me as an option or an opportunity to keep my family intact.
Joyce says she thinks the city wouldn't have separated her family if she were white.
It has to be by design, because if it wasn't, we wouldn't be the ones with our children being taken away.
What makes you think that white parents don't face the same scrutiny?
If my daughter would fall and maybe twist her arm or something and I take her to emergency, a call would be placed asking questions of me as to how this truly happened.
It's not just about one person. It's not
At Joyce's weekly support group meeting, we met other parents who felt the same way. How many of you think that you were judged more harshly than white parents when the decision was made to put your children in foster care? In New York City, the total number of children in foster care has dropped dramatically in 15 years. But the children going into foster care here are disproportionately from communities of color. And once in, black children stay in. For example, on any given day in New York State, a black child is 5 times more likely than a white child to be in foster care. Critics blame bias from schools, hospitals, and police, who by law must report suspected abuse or neglect of children, to social workers and judges, who decide whether to remove them from their families.
When a call comes in, it's already predetermined that the child will be removed. And how would we know that? When a call comes in for a white community, they go out and investigate. If a call comes in and it's a community of color, they'll put the infant car seat in the car.
Gladys Carrion, the head of New York City's child welfare agency, says she's aware minorities make up the majority of the city's foster kids.
It's African American children and Hispanic children, primarily.
Why is that?
There are lots of issues. One is that poor families in this city and across the country are subject to more surveillance and oversight. I think the other part of it is really the racism. I think we should be honest about that.
She says all of the agency's 6,000 employees have to go through anti-racism training.
The next step is, what do we need to do to move that needle more?
How much do you think you've been able to move that needle in terms of racial disparity in foster care?
Well, I don't think we've moved it a hell of a lot, quite frankly.
What's taking so long?
Oh my God, everything takes a real long time. These are really large bureaucracies, right? Large bureaucracies, change is difficult. And really, it's just not the Administration for Children's Services. There are lots of other people that are involved in our system.
The title of this morning's session is Child Welfare and Implicit Bias.
Edwina Richardson Mendelson is part of that system. She's the top judge of New York City's family courts.
We're making critically important decisions about whether children go into foster care or whether or not they stay home with their parents.
She says everyone is biased in some way, so she's training new judges to be aware of it.
We need to check what's going on in our own heads and within our own hearts to make sure we are removing because it's dangerous for a child to be at home with a parent.
I know that it will be a challenge because I know how little time there is for each case, but that will be my focus, and to always keep my focus on why can't this child go home yet? And what can we do to change that?
You and Santa Claus?
Joyce McMillan says more must be done to help parents like her.
If the protective factors were utilized from when Courtney was removed, we would have never had the same issue with Kayla.
Joyce's second daughter, Kayla, was put in foster care when she was 3 months old. You lost Courtney to foster care because you were using drugs, and you didn't stop. As a result, you lost Kayla. Why did you continue to use drugs?
It was a difficult time. It was a time when I felt very much alone, not supported.
What did you do to get Kayla back?
I fought really hard. I changed my life. I stopped.
Did foster care help in a way because it helped you become clean?
Absolutely not, because they didn't help me come clean. What it did was it tore my family apart. I found the strength inside of me to do what I needed to do to fight them.
By the time Kayla returned, she was nearly 2 and didn't recognize her mother.
When I picked Kayla up that night, I can remember the gut-wrenching screams like it was yesterday.
Kayla, now 15, has struggled ever since. Courtney has fared better, perhaps because her foster placement was with her father. She finished college and is working in New York City. Still, she feels her family was unfairly separated.
Ripping kids from their mother or their home or any family they've known is not the answer. It's an extremely traumatic experience, and I don't want that for anyone. And I pray that it changes.
Of course, foster care does help a lot of children, but many studies suggest long-term foster care puts kids at a greater risk of dropping out of school, unemployment, and going to prison. John.
So difficult for these families. Roxana, thank you very much.
NaNTV is back, baby. Yeah, man, we've been sitting here watching videos how for a very long time, man, they've been stealing children of color, man. It's big business in America, man. We're going to watch some videos together, you know, some things that, you know, people going against the system don't ever get no justice.
He keeps raising healthcare costs.
You know, and what you got to do, America, is stand up for your rights. Because if you don't stand up for your rights, ain't nobody else going to do it for you. You know what I'm saying? Speak your voices out.
Costs.
See what we got.
ABC 10's Morgan Reiner covers all things politics and spoke to desperate families today.
Chris, every person I spoke to today had a heartbreaking story of how they've lost their children to the system. They came ready with a list of solutions they're hoping will get accomplished. Tammy Weinbrenner is fighting to keep her 3 young granddaughters out of foster care.
My grandbabies were taken about 2.5, 3 years ago with no proof of the allegations or whatever.
Stephanie Jeffcoat lost her toddler to adopters while she was in prison for 6 months.
I was never notified of any court date. I was never taken to court. I wasn't served any papers. I went in and got out of jail 6 months later to find out that my daughter was adopted.
17-year-old Isis Hernandez is currently in foster care when she said she has extended family willing to take her in.
My aunt, she lives around here.
And they won't let you stay with your aunt?
No, because it's not in Kern County.
One family after another took to the steps to share their personal experiences.
We're talking about, let's be clear, dismantling a racist and dehumanizing system.
Yep.
Vanya Quarles is the director of Starting Over Incorporated.
To bring attention to the fact that CPS is unchecked and wreaking havoc in predominantly Black, brown, and poor families, and we wanted to stop.
So what solutions is she bringing to the table?
So we are asking that family reunification be given individualized assessments, and that CPS respects the relationships of family, whether they're blood relationships or not.
Quarles said there should also be more of a focus on unifying families rather than finding new ones, and then making the appeals process easier, which she said is almost non-existent. Now, an important note, the California Department of Social Services told me child welfare services are county administered in California, so not state-run.
Something to keep in mind. Morgan Reiner starting us off tonight. Morgan, thank you.
Well, that's pretty interesting. They're giving away these kids, and people ain't even getting a chance to fight for them. Lady was, you know, found out 6 months later her kids was in foster care after they done threw her in jail. And who's to say from throwing her in jail was even justly right? You know, these are racist institutions that have been going on in America for a very long time. Unchecked. Nobody's doing the balance sheet. Nobody's checking to see if these kids is okay. Nobody's trying to reunificate the kids with the family. It's the same here in Alaska. You know, they used to steal native children and send them off to their boarding schools like Mount Edgecombe and other places like that, even out of state, before the Indian Child Welfare Act came into place, and the atrocities that happened to the children there, you know, being raped, beaten, starved. Tape on the cabinets ain't the first time my son done said this. There's more accounts of foster children saying they got tape where the food is at, that the kids can't even get to the food, you know? Because you got to remember, it's a big business for the foster parent. They pocket in the money. Like when my mother and her family was taken away by the overseer slave masters, my grandpa was a United States veteran. He used to get big veteran checks, you know, to take care of his family. Come to find out, they were supposed to save that money for when all my mom and her siblings turned 18, and guess what happened? The foster care people stole the money. Stole the money. My grandpa's veteran checks, who fought for the country, who died in this country, who was a United States citizen, who is an American. And then the foster people stole his veteran checks. What does that say about the system that we so-called say is the righteous way of living? It's all a white lie, man. They want you to live a certain way because that's their way. Like when Kendrick made that song, we're not the same, man. We not the same. Samoan people don't live like black people. Black people don't live like Mexican people. Mexican people don't live like native people. Native people don't want to live like white people. What don't you understand about that? The bottom line is, do we take care of our kids? What do the kids want? How come nobody asks what the kids want to do, right? No, you get these crooked people in there that say this and this about you because they work for these places. They don't want your kids to reunify with the home. They got bigger plans for your children, America. And then with all this Epstein stuff going on, man, who knows what's been going on with all these kids in America? Has anybody checked on these kids to see if they okay, or if they being trafficked? Or if they foster parents ain't doing something atrocities to them? Well, we gonna keep letting this kind of stuff ride, or we gonna say something about it? Because NaNTV is gonna say something. Anytime you step to NaNTV, we are stepping back. No holds barred, man. We coming at you, man. You got something to say? It is what it is. Freedom of speech. We're here to educate the people. Power to the people, not to the system, the broken system. It's like you start a system and it's broken and you don't ever fix it. You just keep using the same broken shit. All right, NaNTV, we're going to take another break, man. We're going to check out some more videos of this racial injustice going on in America since its conception. And yeah, it's still going on today. You know, it's a proven fact. Statistics don't lie. People's truth don't lie. People's stories don't lie. They don't never die. They multiply. NaNTV, baby.
Early 1900s, when the field of social work was emerging in the United States, most white social workers had no interest in serving specifically black folks. And part of the reason was because of this belief that blacks were innately immoral and criminal and bad, and they couldn't be helped. White folks, when white folks did bad things or committed crimes, it was because of poverty, or it was because of self-defense. I mean, there was a reason. There was always a good reason for a white person's crime, or often a good reason for a white person's crime. And The fact of a person's whiteness meant that they could be saved, they could be rehabilitated, they could be rescued from criminality, they could be rescued from poverty, they could be educated. Black folks, on the other hand, couldn't be. And interestingly enough, they didn't have that same attitude. Many white social workers didn't have that same attitude about indigenous folks, about Hispanics, brown-skinned Hispanics, for example, Asian Americans. If they were going to help people of color, they were more likely to help non-black people of color. So if you were a social worker and your clients are all white or almost all white or majority white, why is that? What does that mean? When clients of color come to you seeking help, when you have the opportunity to help a client of color, how do you feel about that? Do you feel uncomfortable? If you feel comfortable, are you telling yourself, well, they're just human beings. They're just like everybody else. So race doesn't matter. Race, gender, and class, that doesn't matter. It does matter. Yes, people of color, poor people of color are just people. They're people living with racism, sexism, classism. It's important to understand that. And it's important to understand your relationship as a social worker to institutional racism, sexism, and classism. So again, looking at examining, analyzing, seeking to understand what social workers have done in the past, what they thought about their clients, how their beliefs were structured by race, gender, and sexual constructions, or race, gender, and sexual constructs can help clinical social workers do the best job, the best possible job they can when they are serving white clients and clients of color from low-income communities.
Phoenix, Arizona. When single mom Nida Richards moved her family here in 2015, it felt like a fresh start.
If I would have known what I know now, I would have never came here.
After she gave birth to her youngest daughter, hospital staff decided to drug test her. Richard says she didn't use drugs, but her daughter's test came back positive for amphetamine.
I just kind of lost it at that time. I kind of knew the end results of it.
A caseworker with the state's Department of Child Safety came to investigate.
That was stressful. That was beyond stressful. That was degrading.
Case records Richards provided to NBC News and ProPublica show it was found to be a false positive. Just months later, Richards was investigated again when she brought the same daughter to the hospital after she fell off the couch.
I feel like Target.
Why?
The color. The color of my skin.
Nationwide, black children are more likely than white children to experience a child welfare investigation and enter foster care. But Maricopa County, which includes Phoenix, stands out among the nation's largest counties with one of the highest rates of investigation for black families, according to federal data analyzed by ProPublica and NBC News. Between 2015 and 2019, more than 1 in 3 black children in the county experienced a DCS investigation. That's nearly 3 times the rate of white children.
Our community is being stripped of its children.
Former DCS caseworker Matthew Stewart grew up fighting for civil rights alongside his pastor father. He left the department after 10 years, disenchanted.
I'm at an agency who I don't believe was treating black families with justice. I was ashamed, to be honest.
Mike Faust is the director of the Department of Child Safety.
Do you think that bias is behind it?
It raises a lot of questions. I think we must always consider bias in our decision making, but there's a lot of other factors other than just bias that weigh in. If it was solely bias, then doing more training on bias would fix racial disparity.
According to DCS, since 2016, the number of children of all races in foster care has dropped by 30%, in part because the agency has reduced how many families are investigated in the first place. But the most recent data shows statewide the disparity between white and black families investigated by DCS has actually grown. Faust acknowledges there's still work to be done.
We haven't gotten to this point across the country on racial disparity in foster care or any youth-serving system overnight. This has happened over decades, and so it takes a long period of time to engage in a very different way.
Stewart, the former caseworker, now runs a nonprofit dedicated to helping black families impacted by the system. He meets with Faust every month.
I'm hopeful that will make a change, but it really will take that strong message across the state to say this is how we will treat families.
In Nida Richards' cases, both investigations were closed, finding no evidence of abuse or neglect. But the damage, according to Richards, was already done.
I've worked hard my whole life, and to allow the system to come and tell me my best ain't good enough. I protected, I provided, I've housed, and I've fed all my kids by myself.
Instead of suspicion, she says, what she needed was support. Stephanie Gosk, NBC News, Phoenix.
So what you trying to say, Mr. Butler?
Whatever changes you have to make, then you just do it. You got to think about your life. Being a black man in America isn't easy. The hunt is on. And you're the prey.
All right, y'all. Well, that concludes our day at NaNTV. You know what it is, man. We got to talk about a lot of good subjects today. Tomorrow we'll be bringing, well, not tomorrow, but my next episode. You know, I got to take a day off. I can't keep bringing y'all the real every day. I got stuff to do, you know. I got, you know, dad duties that require my attention. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, NaNTV gonna keep bringing you the real and exposing these child protective services here in Alaska, stealing black and indigenous children and any other minorities that they can get their hands on. You know, we're gonna talk tomorrow about how they still stealing children, but they doing it real sneaky now. How they doing the Spanish people? You know, they putting their kids in detention centers and all that crazy stuff. You know what I'm saying? Just a lot of wild stuff going on in the world, man. And if you're not aware of what's going on, or you're not ready to step up to the plate and say something about it, maybe you should just sit down and shut the fuck, up. Because we here. AKliens is here. NaNTV's here. Ain't nothing stopping the show. One monkey don't stop the show. You take one down and another one gonna rise. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna keep bringing you the truth. The power of the people, man. NaNTV. We out of here.
Raise your hand if you're married. None of you are married. Raise your hand if you would like to be married to your baby's father. One. The rest of you who don't plan to get married, why don't you plan to get married? I'd like to know that.
You already have your child to think about, and then a whole family to care for. You know, it's a lot of responsibility. And then you don't want the commitments.
I wouldn't want no man holding me down, because I think I can make it as a single parent.
But don't you think you might need help in raising that baby from a man?
Not really. I didn't have a father. My father wasn't in the home, so, it really, male figures are not substantially important in the family.
I ain't thinking about holding up for no sex, my man. You know, if a girl, she get having a baby, carrying a baby, hey, that's on her. I'm not gonna stop my pleasures because of another woman.
What about birth control? What about condom?
Girls don't like them things. They don't like them things. Girl tell you to take them things off. They figure that you saying that they filthy or they dirty or something.
It's been a startling change in values. 25 years ago, you would not have heard such things said so freely because they were not embraced so widely. The strong family was still the backbone of Black America, and 3 out of 4 children had both parents at home. That is true no longer. Most black children are now growing up without their fathers. The result is a world turned upside down as children copy what they see and repeat what they learn. LaDawn said she didn't have a father in her home and doesn't think her children need one. She's not unusual. Half the black families today are headed only by a woman. Clorinda said she could make it on her own as a single parent. She has never been married and is raising her daughter without a man's help. She's not unusual. Today, nearly 60% of all black children are born out of wedlock. Timothy said his children are not his responsibility. He has left them to be supported by their mothers and welfare. He's not unusual either. For LaDon and Clorinda and Timothy, and many more like them in cities all over America, the traditional family no longer exists. It has vanished, and something new is taking its place. Single women and the children they're rearing alone are the fastest growing part of the black population. What becomes of the black family in a world where the values are being turned upside down?
If the parent is 17 and 18, uneducated, unmotivated, fooling around, wandering around, what's the child going to learn? Who's to teach him? When you learn something, you was taught by your parents. It was reinforced by school and your neighbors, but it was taught by your parents. Well, if the parents don't know anything, how are they going to teach the children? So it's not racism that I'm fighting right now. It's the lack of motivation. See, I'm not even talking about racism. Maybe later on we'll get back to that. But I think we are destroying ourselves.